Hi everybody, and welcome to the University of Guelph. I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce myself and to say welcome to exciting new adventures in academics and also some social stuff, I hope, and to wish you all the very best in your upcoming challenges and opportunities. My name is Dr. Shoshanah Jacobs. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Integrative Biology, which is in the College of Biological Sciences. And if departments in colleges are unfamiliar vocabulary to you in terms of how they function within the university, don't worry, you will get it really soon. I spend a lot of time studying seabirds and other things like that, but one of the parts of my research is related to high school and university education, as well as how students learn. And I spend a lot of time asking students about what they do to learn and gathering information and evidence on effective ways of learning so that they can maximize their performance when it's time to take a test and things like that. Another part of my research is on accessibility and inclusivity. So how can we make our courses and the things that we do more accessible to students and also more inclusive? They've given me 10 minutes. I'm not going to take up that much time, but it is a short time to tell you all the things that I want to tell you about learning and studying. So I picked one thing that I hope, will help you make sense of what you need to do in order to do well on a test. Okay? So what I want you to do is think a little bit about what you did the last time you were in a formal education system, so probably high school, but not necessarily. What did you do to study for a big test that was coming up? A lot of students say things like, well, I read the textbook, or I read my notes, or I rewrote my notes, or I wrote notes from the textbook, that kind of deal. Those are all the types of things that I'm looking for you to kind of think about a little bit. And that's a really interesting approach. If we think about, though, the whole process of learning to testing, we need to understand that there are some steps, right? And in the middle of all of those steps is our brain. So here's our brain. And when we study, and I've asked lots and lots of students this question, I also was a student, so I reflect a little bit on my own practice as well. When we study, we spend a lot of time trying to get information into our brains, right? We call it cramming, and literally that's where it comes from. We're trying to cram information into our brains, okay? So that's great. So we've stored the information in our memories, and we know that sometimes there are easier ways of doing it than others, for sure. And I'm happy to talk about those ways in the future if you're ever interested. But what I want to talk about is a really overlooked part of studying, because we very rarely go beyond the brain and beyond putting information into our brain when we're studying. But what happens? You go to a big gym or you go to their classroom, and then you have to get the information from your brain onto the test. The big problem is that you haven't really practiced this part of doing well on a test. You've only really practiced memorizing or putting that information into memory. And you haven't practiced getting the information out of your brain. So maybe, for example, you'll take a look at all of the different topics and you'll say things like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, I know how to do that, I know how to do that, good. But really, you've stored that information, but do you know how to get it out of your brain? And this takes practice, this is a skill, and it's overlooked when we're doing studying. And the reason for this is a couple of interesting things about it. So let's just take off a piece of paper here. And we're gonna take a look at storing information and getting information out of your brain. So we're gonna do it on a graph. If you're unfamiliar with sort of working with graphs, don't worry, I'm gonna walk you through this. It's hopefully it should be easy. So let's just say on this axis here, the y-axis, we're gonna put storage. So that's your ability to store, right? To cram it in. But on the x-axis here, we're gonna put something called retrieval, your ability to get it out, right? And obviously, you're hoping to store it really well and retrieve it really fast, okay? That's what a test is. That's your gold standard. We can kind of divide up this graph into different quadrants and think a little bit about the information that could fit in each of them. So try to think of something that has really low retrieval, so it's not easy to get out, and it's also not easy to store. For me, unfortunately, the names of new people. I literally forget it within 5 seconds of being told. Poor retrieval, poor storage, right? Let's try to think of something that has poor retrieval, but high storage. So your brain knows it really well, but it just may take a few moments to get out. For me, that's the landline phone number in the house that I was born in. Okay, so you may not have landlines in your experience, but imagine if there was a common phone number that your whole family used, okay? So any kind of like old family information may take a little while to get out, but once it's out there. So 2583906 was the phone number of my family's house, right? Old family information. Over here, it may be easy to come out, but have low storage ability. And those are things like bits of information that you need in the moment, but you don't need after that. So for example, if you're gonna stay in a hotel room, your hotel room number. I can tell you if I was in a hotel room now what the number is, but I really can't tell you what it was last week, right? In many cases, students really just try to achieve this area of content and understanding when they cram information, right? So they learn it for a short period of time, they get it out, and then they forget it. And I hope that that's kind of a familiar thing. You forget everything after the test, right? But we're trying to get up here. And up here is a really comfortable spot, right? It's pretty much where my knowledge of biology is, right? So any kind of professional knowledge, right? Okay? And so we're trying to get there. The really good news is that if we study harder in any of these 3 areas, we're actually not going to make any improvements. The only place where we can make real improvements to storing and retrieving information is here. And for the moment, this quadrant, this space, is where you are right now with respect to all of the things that are going to be thrown at you over the next few months and over the next few years, right? You don't know it and you don't know how to get it out. And so we have a real opportunity to bring you up into this quadrant by making some slight modifications to the way that you study. So we have to address this retrieval practice idea. We have to get you practicing how to get the information out of your brains and onto the paper effectively. And the best way that we know how to do that is a really simple concept. Nothing's easy though, it's going to take more work. It's called self-testing. What does it look like? Well, instead of going and reading the book and then answering some questions or doing some practice tests, my recommendation is before you read your notes, look at the topic and then write down everything that you know about that topic. And it could be 3 words, it could be 6 paragraphs. Practice getting what's there out of your brain. That'll do a couple of things. It'll sort of, exercise that retrieval practice part of your brain, that muscle, if you will. And when you put it down on paper, your brain will either notice how little you really know and allow you to increase your stress such that you focus, or it will also allow you to identify mistakes in the things that you think you know. Because when you then go and read, so write everything down that you know, or talk everything out in a video or whatever, it's about getting it out, not necessarily about what you put it down on, okay? Do all of that, then read your notes, read your textbook, and you'll notice mistakes that you've made in that attempt to retrieve the information. That will highlight it in your brain, and I promise you, you will be more likely to learn the correct way once you've made that mistake. Making mistakes is a key part of learning, and please make them. Make sure that you respond appropriately, so laughing it off or seeking out the positive way of correcting that or whatever it is you need to. But making that mistake kind of puts a little flag in your brain that focuses your attention. So self-test, identify gaps, identify mistakes, and then fix them. And that's going to be a lot more effective way of studying, of practicing that retrieval process that you need. If you want to know more, I would be more than happy to meet with you. You don't have to be in my department or in any of my classes to get in touch. Please do. If you want me to come and talk to you in residence, I'd be happy to do that too. So that could be a bunch of you or even just one of you if you're interested in learning more. This is me, so Dr. Jacobs, easy to find. And this is my email address. You can take a photo of this screen right now if you want, so you've got a copy. If not, I'm really easy to find on the University of Guelph directory. And please feel free to get in touch. Have a wonderful semester, and I hope to meet some of you soon.